Hi, Russell Sturgis again, and this is the third instalment in our blog series on stillness, and today I'm talking about stillness in the mind. You'll see that it's quite windy behind me here, and so you'll hear the palm trees making lots of noise, but hopefully the microphone will have my voice be as clear as possible. So please be patient with all the wind behind. In the blog today, I have explored the whole idea that thinking like time is a resource, in that just like time we have 24 hours or 86,400 seconds in which we can spend our time however we want. And of course, in the course of that time, where our mind is always active in one form or another, and like time, we have the choice about how we use our mind during that 24-hour period. And one of the things that I'd like to ask you is if you've ever done a thinking inventory, where you've taken an opportunity to sit down and consider how you've used your mind over the previous 24 or 48 hours. And if you had to be accountable about how you used your mind, what would that look like? It's kind of an interesting thing to consider. For example, in any moment where we either can choose to think about what it is that we want to engage our mind in, or we go with whatever the mind brings to us. So whatever thought sort of pops in, we sort of go with that, and all of a sudden we find ourselves out on a stream of thinking that we didn't consciously choose. It's sort of more like it chose us. And of course, what often happens in that situation when there's no discipline around that is that another thought pops in, and then we go off on a tangent, and another thought pops in. It's a little bit like Googling for something, and you start Googling and you get through, and then all of a sudden something catches your interest and you go off on a tangent. The mind's a little bit like that, in that it takes us on all these different tangents. The other thing that happens is, in terms of how you use the mind, what sort of percentage of your thinking time would be negative thoughts, and how much of it would be uplifting or positive thoughts? I used to do workshops in the past where I'd say to people, if you think about your self-talk, and it was a personality other than you, and would you allow your son or daughter to go out with your self-talk? Is this somebody who you would be happy for them to be with? And it's amazing how many people sort of start to have a bit of a chuckle when they start to think about their self-talk. And of course, for many of us, our self-talk is quite negative, and it's driven by worst case scenario. And of course, this is one of the really key things when it comes to this inventory of looking at our thinking, because one of the ways that we're able to divide it up is into past, present and future. So how much time do you spend in the past thinking about things that have happened in the past, in your memories? Of course, we're all familiar with the whole idea that we can smell something, and if I was to smell a chicken and mushroom pie, it'd take me right back to living in Dalby, and it was one of the meals that was common within our home, and there's sort of a fondness around that from my past. There's all sorts of fragrances. Lantana, and the smell of lantana takes me back to camping as a scout, and so these sorts of things are there either positively or negatively. Even visuals, sometimes, and this is an extreme, you may have had a bad experience with somebody that had a handlebars moustache, and so anytime you meet somebody now with a handlebars moustache, you're immediately taken back in your thoughts and your memory to your painful experiences of the past. And of course, there's lots of triggers that we encounter in this moment that will take us back to our experiences of the past. And of course, for some, lives were filled with joy, and they were memorable, joyful experiences, and for others there was lots of pain. And so what happens is we get to relive those experiences. Of course, what happens is those experiences and the way in which we engage them in our mind with the filters that we have is then projected into the future. And so we end up with fearful expectations or joyful expectations about what the future holds based on our past. And in fact, A Course in Miracles in its teachings is very clear with the whole idea that we're constantly populating our future with our memories of the past, and we're relating to the possibility of the future from our past. The other thing that we have is the time frame of now, is in this moment, here now. And of course, once again, we can either be truly present to this moment where there's no filters at all, or we distort this moment through our filters of memory from the past, from our perceived memories of what happened, and projecting those onto this moment here. So once again, we have this ability to be truly present, or in fact distorted and truly absent to it. And of course, any time we experience this moment, whether it be ultimately joyful or sad or whatever it is, a lot of its framework comes from our past experience, and that's based on the whole idea that nothing innately has an emotional experience tied in with it, because we can have 30 or 40 people witness the same thing and have a whole array of different experiences that are all going to be influenced by the filters, which is the accumulated history of the person that's standing there witnessing whatever it is that they're witnessing. So in the blog, I discuss this whole idea that how we invest our thinking and our capacity to change that requires a high degree of awareness. So Buddha talked about the concept of monkey mind, which is the mind that's jumping all over the place, going from place to place to place. And of course, his whole model was about moving towards stillness, ultimately. And the process of doing that was about developing this capacity for mindfulness. And of course, meditation was one of the key ways that this was achieved. However, as many of you may have experienced, you may have started out with a commitment to doing meditation, and after a few months, a few weeks, a few days even, found yourself struggling to maintain the discipline of being in that place of enhanced mindfulness and awareness, and the struggle in staying committed to doing the meditation. Part of the reason that happens is that we each have a core desire, something that we want that is responsible for informing our values. And it's that desire and those values that basically determine how we spend our resources, which includes how we use our thinking. So in today's blog, I take the time to discuss where those desires come from and what it is that we can do about that in order to have more responsibility about how we use our thoughts, how we use our mind. Instead of being reactive to the mind, we become proactive. In other words, we then have the capacity to choose how we use our mind. And instead of it being about choosing to stay in suffering, it's about developing that capacity to choose peace. It's about developing that ability to be able to live your life in stillness. And stillness is a state of the mind, it's a state of the body, it's a state of the heart, and it's a state of the spirit. But it's that capacity to be able to be the observer and recognize that I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. And there's a part of us, and you may have experienced that at some stage in your your life where you've been totally engaged in thinking, and then all of a sudden you realise that there's a part of you that's nearly like it's stepped back and it's looking at the thoughts and it's watching you thinking, and in fact it will chuckle or have an opinion about the thoughts that you're having. And the question I ask you is who's doing the observation, who's observing? And I would like to suggest to you that that's your higher self, that's your the real you, the true you, that has this ability to be the witness of these things. And of course, what that helps to clarify is that you have thoughts, but you're more than your thoughts, because there's something that can witness them. Anyway, stillness in thinking is something that's very real. It's something that allows you to experience peace in your life, and more particularly is able to be maintained through becoming clear about your noble purpose, so that the more you become oriented to your unique form of service in the world, it impacts on the way in which you use your mind. And you find that instead of being reactive in terms of how the mind works, when you become clear about your noble purpose, your unique expression of service, you find that your mind's much more engaged and committed to being able to fulfill that purpose and that service. Anyway, hope you find this of interest. Please take time to read the blog. Go to our website, eapmentor.com, to find out more about our program, because we help you to be able to identify those values and desires and help you to change them in a way that they better serve you. And go to our Facebook site, Enhances Awareness Program. We have lots of wonderful stuff there. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon.